So to wrap this first video session up, I'm going to present you with one last video and yet another view onto the motor. And I'm going to talk you through the bits and bobs you can see from this angle. Let me also know maybe in the comments if you like whether you've done this kind of work yourselves before on this engine or a similar engine. I also warmly welcome Renault or Peugeot owners or even DeLorean owners. The DeLorean had the same engine or almost the same engine as this car in it. It actually, I believe it had the B28 variant, one of the lesser variants of this engine in it. Some people say the DeLorean failed because of this engine. I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I think the DeLorean failed because it was the DeLorean, even if it's a gorgeous car to look at. But I think to produce a car from scratch in great numbers and then be under the illusion that you're going to win over the market with just one model might have been a Coke-infused early 80s, maybe even late 70s fantasy that in hindsight was, prone to be doomed from the beginning. Anyway, so what can we see here? What you have in front of you is the left camshaft rocker display or arrangement. You can see the tappet screws here with the locking nuts. So basically we're going to show you this in a bit more detail. We're going to go in closer with the camera. What you have to do is you have to adjust the inlet and outlet valves on this motor by loosening the lock nuts and then inserting a shim between the valve top and the tappet, and then you have to adjust them by setting them to a certain resistance on the shim, withdraw the shim, and then lock the adjusting screw with the lock nut. It's a 2 to 3 hour job. You can do it on your own. It takes a bit of experience, and it's not an exact science. It is something that you learn to do, and you learn to trust your instinct as well when you're doing it. The resistance on the shim is not a standardized thing. You can't measure the exact resistance. It's something that you acquire over time. You kind of get the feel on exactly how much resistance is required and how to get this resistance between the tappet and the valve even across the whole engine, because of course ideally you would get it to more or less the same amount, the same value, the same amount of resistance across all valves. There's also 2 different shims that you have to use depending on whether you're adjusting an exhaust valve or an inlet valve. The exact numbers can be found on the internet in your Haynes manual. There's even a sticker in the engine bay right behind the AC's condenser unit that will show you the exact values as prescribed by the manufacturer. There's a funny detail to that actually. Volvo specifies 2 different sets of valve clearances, one for a cold engine and one for a hot engine. But I can tell you, at least as an amateur who doesn't do this every day, it's a heck of a job and a heck of an accomplishment to be adjusting your valve clearances with the shim on a warm engine, because it's a bit of work to remove the valve covers and to clear the engine bay so that you can work on it. And I guess in most cases you will be working on a cold engine when doing this in your own garage. What you can also see very quickly on this video is that there are no cable harnesses in this engine bay. That's because we're also replacing all 3 of those.